y'all, and welcome to another episode of Hangin with Hobo. I'm Steve, Hobo with Wood, for those who have not been here before, but I think most of you I've seen in the comments. You're my regulars. I appreciate you being here. Hope everybody's had a good week. I hope everybody who was affected by Debbie was able to dry out. For me, it was uneventful because I slept through the whole thing. Kind of like I did with Hugo. I slept through most of Hurricane Hugo. Hugo was a whole lot worse for us. But Debbie dumped a lot of water here. There's a lot of flooding going on. But I worked so hard and so many hours Monday and Tuesday. I believe it was Wednesday when it come through. I woke up and seen it was pouring down rain. I just laid back down. Next thing I know, it was middle of the afternoon. I done slept through the whole thing. So hopefully anybody who had any negative effects, any down trees or any flooding, you got all that cleaned up and dried out. I made some progress with my renovations this week. I got my first wall up. First partial wall, I should say. And I knew nothing in this house was going to be square because it's built in 1900, 1901 with rough cut lumber, probably cut on site. Ain't nothing on this thing square. And I'm building a wall that's transitioning from what used to be the back porch. And also now this wall is going from the back porch and inside the house. Well, I knew I had a problem with the back porch having a slope as it sloped away from the house. I figured out how to fix that. So I took care of that and built the wall, stood it up and put it in position. One thing I didn't think about, and I assumed, and I know better than to assume, we all should know better than to assume. I assumed the ceiling was going to be level because I checked the level in the interior part of the house. It was all level. The roof in the porch also has a slope on it. So now I've got to shim between the top of the wall and the porch, partially. But hey, we're making progress. So I'm just welcoming everybody and saying hey to everybody to give the stragglers time to get here before we jump into the design. But what we're going to do is I'm going to show you this piece here. This is a 3-layer design. Simple artwork, and you can do anything with these frames, and that's kind of the idea here. Is this is available on Hobo with Wood, but I'm going to show you how easy it is if you get this file from Hobo with Wood to modify the artwork, the pre-existing artwork, and use it for anything you want it to be. You can customize it so easily, but I'm going to go into in depth on how to make this today, including and what gets most people, what has so many people hung up is making the stand. How to make that floating stand. And yes, Jack, I've seen your comments. Jack was one of the first ones, if not the first one in the comments today. He says, hey, Steve. And then he went on and said, I know how to make it float. Throw it in water. Yeah, and throw it in the toilet. Throw it in the water. It'll float. But getting the geometry for that stand and getting the right angle, getting the balance just right. And I even had to go back in, and for my patrons, they've already seen this. And I designed this yesterday. Yeah, I designed this yesterday between hammer blows. And this was my prototype. And when I put it together, I found problems with my stand on the prototype. Had to go back in and fix those, did that. But also while I was talking to my patrons and showing this and explaining it, the base is the same size as the entire artwork. And it's just that perimeter cut out and put on the base. It's a rather large base, but it needs to be that large because these 3 layers, this is a lot of material. It's big, it's heavy. And I knew it was going to be top heavy. So I said, well, I'm just going to do that. And plus the symmetry will look good. But then while I was showing the patrons, I was like, you know what would look good? And I was holding it in my hand and I could feel that, the top of it's, heavy. If the base was bigger, heavier. It would feel better in the hand. And then I was like, yeah, and it might even look better. Again, keeping up with the symmetry of it. And I said, you know what? And then I designed this and laid it all out on a single piece of 12 by 12 or 300 millimeter square material. I said, well, if it was a layered base, if it was a 3-tiered base, it would be more material, be heavier, and it wouldn't have to be as large of a footprint. And being stacked it would still probably be stable. I said, so let me go look at that and see if I can make that happen. And I was able to figure out a way to create a 3-tiered base and nest all 3 tiers into the existing 12 by 12 material and still keep this. So there's 2 base options in the design. I'm going to show you all that in a couple of minutes. But we got 66 of you here now. Again, thank each of you for being here. I'll look and see if you have any questions in the comments in a second. But wanted to give a couple of house rules for first-time viewers, anybody that's just tuning in. What I ask for is if you have a question, and whenever I get into the design process, I'll design a little bit and stop and come look for questions, design a little bit and stop. Anytime you have a question that you really want to have answered or me to acknowledge, precede your question in the comment field with a couple of question marks. Put your question marks in first and then put your question in, and that will capture my attention. And as you learn things in the demonstration and the tutorial, if you learn something new, each time you learn something, put a corresponding number in for for what you've learned. If you learn something new, put in a 1. If you learn a new something, drop in a 2. And this only helps with my analytics on YouTube. It keeps the comments going, and it helps me know that you didn't fall asleep and it's actually worth my time to show you and people learn things. And I'm going to address a couple of email questions one specific before we jump into design that a lot of you will probably benefit from too. So let's look here at the comments and questions, looking for any of the question marks. Got all the regular hays and highs, and howdy to everybody. Again, I hope everybody stayed safe. The flooding was bad all up the East Coast. I seen the flooding all the way up as far as into New York, and I think I even seen parts of Canada with potential flooding. John's asking me, do I have a link for my triple thick coating? I do. Let's see here. I think it's 3X glaze, but let me look here. I don't remember. In fact, let me share this with you. Switch. So this is the Hobo with Wood website. And if you click on shop supplies, I haven't updated this, and I need to double check everything, and I just haven't got around to it. And I need to add some more things. But these are the pieces that I use regularly in my shop. And there's the Rust-Oleum triple thick glaze. And there's a link for it there. I'm going to copy that link, copy, drop it in the comments, I hope, paste. Yep, that works. So I just put that pasted that link into the comment field. That's the triple thick glaze. There's the Brilliance laser marking spray and the video for the Brilliance. If you're doing marking on stainless or different metals with the diode laser, it works great. But these are some of the different things that I use in my shop. And I really need to update and add some more things to it, like the mouse. Man, this thing is the bomb. Several of you have gotten it, got it on Prime Day, and love it. Let's see here. And we got more clowns in the shop. There's no question mark, but Chris stands out sometimes. He's commenting about how to make it float. He said, I would have gone with a helium-filled balloon. Let's see here. Looking for any. All right, good. All right, now I'm going to mark my spot here in the questions and comments so I know where to go back to when I scroll through. So I received, and I haven't seen him in here yet. He'll probably be here because this time slot is for really to accommodate those across the pond and elsewhere around the world. It's just this maybe a little bit more convenient time slot for them. But I received an email from Stephen who is asking, he had a problem with trying to create an array of circles within a pattern for sewing stuff together. I don't fully understand what his design is, what he's doing, but I'll just show you real quick and then show you the solution. Let's see, auto switch and email. All right, it says, when you have time, could you help me with a problem trying to make a circular array in an oval shape so I can put holes in to make the sewing easier of 2 leather pieces? I didn't read that. I can make a circular array, but I'm unable to pull the sides in to make it fit without distorting the circle holes in the positioning. You don't want to use the circular array for this. You're going to use copy along path. Copy along path will make this so much easier, and it'll keep everything proportional. And a quick demonstration of this, and then again, this is answering his, but hey, this is something you guys might go, oh, okay. And I use this to create, this is one of 2 ways that I create stitching around frame areas. I can do it this way and another way that I do it. But take a look here. We'll switch over. So he's got 2 ovals, and I'm guessing those small little circles are what he's wanting to use as stitching. Or maybe he wants to put a whole lot more in there. I'm not sure. I would assume maybe he is if he's going to sew it together. So there's the pattern. Let's get this out of the way for right now and look at what he's got. So if you've got an oval shape, oh, got to turn that on. No, stupid. Turn that off. I just made them boo-boo. Turn that on. There we go. Grab it all. Nah, come on, bangers. You got to do the selector tool. Select it all. Move that up here out the way. There we go. Now, let's draw an oval. And let's go to the black layer. And you do this early on while you're setting up your design. You've created your first oval shape. And now you know you're going to put some stitching in here. Well, I would do this one of 2 ways. In fact, let me look at his email again. I don't know if this is all part of the design, so I'm going to set this up exactly like he has it, or very, very similar to what he has it. He has an oval, and then he did an offset, and we'll go a 2. I'm having a problem with my Lightburn. Started today. If you look up here, I'm in millimeters. I'm in metric. That's a 2-inch offset instead of doing a 1 or a 2 millimeter offset. And this just started today. I've not had this problem until today. And the way I fix it is click inches and click millimeters, go back and do an offset and tell it. Now see, now it's doing millimeters. I don't know why it's doing that. So outward offset of 2 millimeters. And I'm like, okay, I need to put some stitching in there, and I want the stitching right in the middle of that. Well, I'll go back to this first one, and I'll do another offset and do it 1 millimeter. And that puts it right in the middle and say, okay. And I select that and put it on a toolpath because that's all that is going to be is a toolpath. And now if I want to put some stitching in there, and if he's using perfect circles for that, hold your shift button to draw out a circle, put that on your cut path, select it, and maybe you're doing a 0.75. You're not doing a very large. I did a 0.75. There we go. And put that right dead center on your toolpath. Top dead center. Where are you at, baby? There it is. Well, I missed it. There. Okay. So that's top dead center on that toolpath. Now with that selected, hold shift and select that toolpath, then go to arrange and copy along path. And I need to zoom out so you can see it, and it won't let me zoom out while I'm in there. So I'm going to zoom out and now arrange, copy along path. And I've got 4 copies selected, and that's putting 1, 2, 3, 4 copies like he had in his email. But if you're doing actual stitching and you want to do it with a 2 millimeter gap between them, come down here, instead of number of copies, change it to space between copies, and tell it you want 2 millimeters between each space, or between each circle, and say okay. And that put in, well, that kind of screwed up right there. Not screwed up, it's too tight right there at the top, so 2 millimeters wouldn't work. But you can see, you could zoom in and adjust that and change it and change your spacing. But that put in a perfect spacing for stitching. Go back and arrange, copy along path, number of spaces, and we'll do 3 millimeters. That looks better. That gives a good even spacing all the way around there. Say okay. So Stephen, if you are here, there's how you do it. If you're not here in the live, you will see it when you watch the replay, because I know you will do that. But that's how you accomplish what you're trying to do. You don't use circular array. Create you a toolpath in the area that you need those stitches done, and then create one, copy along path, and I'll do it with spaces between them and find one that looks good and it's going to stitch up easy. Easy peasy, Bob's your uncle. Done, done, done. All right, now let's see. Let's see. I'm looking for my marker. There was got that. There's that. Okay. All right. So hey, a few of you already learned a few things. Kent, Clayton, Terry, Beauty Bubble, wonderful. All right, John's got a question right now. Is that the Logitech? Yes, John. This is the M575, and it is a wicked, wicked mouse. It does wonders for me. A whole lot more of you learn some stuff here. Great, wonderful, wonderful. All right, let's see here. Okay, now I forgot to turn that off before I scrolled away from it, dummy. All right, there you go. That's off. Now, if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, hit that subscribe button. If you're in any kind of groups, any laser groups, that I'm a member of, I think the Diode Laser group, of course, Hobo with Wood group on Facebook. If you're on any groups or on Facebook, or even any community chats or anything that are not familiar with me, then and you think maybe some folks in your group would benefit, share the channel with everybody that you can. Let's see if we can't get this to really start to grow some. We hit a little bit of a lull, but it's picking back up. Things are picking up. Things are looking good. But I need you to like, share, and subscribe as much as possible. The website, for those who are not aware, is hobowithwood.com. Hobowithwood.com. And again, like, share, and subscribe. Let's see here. Desert Flowers. Been a long time, but I do have a question. I bought the Halloween and winter lanterns, but my slots are not fit to size on the tabs. Okay. I don't know. You have to resize the slots and tabs for your material. And depending on how long ago you got it, those lantern files were my nemesis. They were the beginning of the downfall of my alliance with other creators in the industry, because accusations were made and negative comments were made and negative feelings were harbored. I had tons of problems with Lightburn, and initially, Lightburn saved that file with the kerf built into the files, and you couldn't get rid of the kerf no matter what you did. It was permanently embedded into the file. And even Lightburn, finally they acknowledged, yeah, there's a problem and we see what happened, but we don't know what happened. We don't know why it happened. And so I ended up having to redesign the entire thing, start from scratch. So it's possible you have some of the original corrupted files and they cannot be edited correctly. They will not work. So do me a favor and send me an email. Wait till after this is over, but send me an email at hobowithwood@gmail.com. And let's see if I got that in a banner. Yeah, there we go. Send me an email at hobowithwood.com saying, hey, I may have those bad files. I'll look at the history and determine if that is most likely the case, and I will send you the new corrected, uncorrupted files. So I'm before we go too far with my work, let's make sure you've got the good files first. Let's see here. Okay, yes, I just bought them a month ago. No, if you just got them a month ago, you've got the good files. You've got the good files. This is just something that you're maybe not familiar with, how to use the resize slots and selection tool. I can meet with you online privately and help you understand how to do all that. But you can search my video content for slots and tabs in all of my videos, and it'll show you how to go through that process. Okay, moving on. As soon as I get a drink. See, I drove my feet long enough that we got a 90 of you here now. We've just went from 60 to 90. So that's why I kind of drag my tail. But hey, for those that got here early, you learned a thing or two already. So that's great. All right. Now, for those who've been watching, you know, I just recently dropped a large 20, I think it was 25 frames in the Lightburn library to my gold patrons. They all got it for free. And I have not decided to sell those. These are going to be gold tier patron opportunities only right now. But I dropped 25 different frames. And not when I say frames, I don't mean this. I mean just the singular artwork to create one frame, one layer. And I took that one layer and created this yesterday afternoon. And if you notice the amount of sheen that's on on the centerpiece, I obtained that. This middle piece is 4 coats of the triple thick glaze, 4 coats on there, and it gives it almost a glass-like appearance when you look at it in person. But the rest of it's got just a lacquer on it, so it doesn't have that same shine. But beyond that, to really give it some a variation and make it stand out, and if you were to look at this up close and in person, and it's going to be lost in the focus of the camera, but in person, you see it, but unless you're really super attentive to detail like I am, you won't know what you're seeing. When I put this on the design for cutout, the outer frame, I knew I was going to paint it. It didn't matter how it was cut out. But the centerpiece is cut with the grains running north and south. But this matte, if you will allow me, I call that the matte, like it's a framed artwork. The matte piece is cut out so that the grains are running east to west. Now, it's very, very thin, but with those grains running counter to grains in there, it makes it stand out even more, other than just the additional dimension of the mat being on top. So it's little things like that that people will notice without noticing, that gives your artwork or your final piece even more detail and better, makes it better looking. In addition to the triple glaze and then the lacquer finish, once it was all glued together, I went back with a black paint and painted all the edges nice and black, because painting that top piece yellow, got a little yellow overspray around the edges, and then it wasn't nice and uniform on the sides. So if you want to get detail, if this is something you're doing for yourself, a loved one, or especially if you're doing it for sale, doing that finished touch takes just a minute, but it makes all the difference in adding quality to your product. Another thing that I noticed during this is the prototype. Whenever I put it together, in fact, I'll show you, it'd be easier to show you in a photograph. The easel here, the very tip down there at the bottom, that easel extends beyond the lower part of the artwork, and it ruins the illusion of it floating. So I had to go in and modify that. And as I said, I created a 3-tier base in addition to that. So let's go look at the design in Lightburn and get rid of that fancy little oval. Switch that around, and let's bring this down here and put all that back on a cut path. Well, nope, I messed it up. You know what? We'll just say delete. In fact, we will import it again. We'll say File, New, and I'm going to bring this in just like you would get it from my commerce. If you downloaded it today and opened it, this is how you would get it. And I'm going to turn this off and bring this over here. Now, when you look at that right now, it's like, okay, man, there's a whole lot of pieces there, and what goes with what, and how does this, so I've got them all labeled. So turn the toolpath back on. The toolpath's got everything labeled. So this piece here is one big cutout, and that's got the artwork on it, and it should be in a fill mode. And that would be the very back piece. Now this one over here is a little bit more confusing. A little. This 2 lines right here, those go together. That's the 3rd layer, or the top, very top piece that I painted yellow. This in here is waist. This piece right here is the bottom layer, or base layer 3. Down here is base layer 2, and then down here is base layer 1. Those are the 3 pieces that would stack together and make the smaller footprint. Then over here is the optional single layer base if you don't want to do the layered. This piece here cuts out, cut line here, and there's a cut line here, and that is the 2nd layer of the picture frame. These are your 2 easels, and this over here, which looks kind of like the space shuttle, you glue it to the bottom of the back of the 1st layer of the frame. So this goes right down to the very bottom here on the back side and lines up perfectly. You put those 2 pieces in there, and they go in either there or there. So it's laid out, and all of this cuts out in a 12 by 12 or 300 by 300 piece of material. You can see there the outer toolpath, I've got it at 300 by 300. And if you're only going to do one or the other base, there's no need, which one do you want to use? There's no need to cut out all those. If you're not going to use the optional single layer base, then what you could do is turn that and that all to it. Well, you grab them both. Turn all of that to a toolpath. So you don't have to delete it. Turn all that to a toolpath. And then this is all going to cut out, and you've got this one area here. Well, what I like to do is I'll come down here kind of at the corner, and I will draw me out. Square is not going to work, but I'll draw out a rectangle about like so, and put that on a cut path, or if it's going to be the edges, actually, once I got that, just come in here and get a pencil tool, and draw a straight line, go a little bit beyond, and down here too, draw straight lines, and then grab those lines and put those on a cut path. And so when you cut all this out, it'll cut out that nice rectangle. And now you've got the meat of your skeleton left in a nice rectangular shape that you can stack and store and not have this huge big piece of unusable skeleton attached to your meat. So that's just one thing that I do to help organize the waste or the unused portions of my material as I'm cutting it out. All right. So that is the basic design. And if I go to my art library and go to the frames, got to learn how to spell frames, F-R, there you go. And that one, let's see. In fact, I'll show you guys if you haven't seen this already. Zoom out. That's my frame library. That's what I just shared with my gold patrons. There's 25 different frames here, and I grabbed, let's see here. We got tips, no tips, no tips. No, come on now. Which one? What? That one. No. There's so many to choose from, I don't even see that one. There, the very first one, dummy. Golly. Very first one. No? That's round. That's not. It's not the first one. Not that one. It's not that one. It's not that one. It's not that one. Number 2? No, you learned number 2. No, it's not number 2. Which? It's irrelevant. We can use any of these, but I'm just curious why I'm not finding that frame. Is this one another one that I had that I don't even have in my collection? It's possible. No, that's it right there. Golly, that's right, because I ended up having to change. I took some of the stitching out. That's what it was. Dummy. Okay, dummy. I thought I used one of these, and it was this one. So number 24. If I open up in 24 and I look at it real close, like I said, this one had some of the stitch work around there that I ended up not using in this art design. And if, is it that one? No, it's not that one. It's 22. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Melis, 1976. Delete that. 22. That's the one. But I got rid of the stitching in this. And that's what I was talking about. You can take these pieces of artwork and just use pieces of them. So there's 25 different designs that I have here, but you can take these and with a little bit of editing, instead of 25, you actually have 50 different possibilities or more. You can, but here, all of the geometry's done, all the symmetry's done, everything, and it's Lightburn friendly and ready to use. And like these are available only to my gold tier members, but I'm going to show you how this is something you can do yourself. Create a basic frame, but go over to patreon.com and sign up as a gold tier supporter. And I'm going to be sharing all these and lots. I'm sharing a new library every month for the next several months. And that's patreon.com/hobo with wood if you wanted to go over and become a regular supporter. All right. So I took this basic frame and I flipped it up on its end, and I'm going to make it a vertical. So I wanted, and I haven't seen anybody read it yet or anybody say it yet. Yes, I know Garfield is a copyrighted thing and all that. And I'm not selling a Garfield artwork. I'm selling this frame design, and he's on there just so you know about positioning and all that. I'm not selling Garfield. I'm selling this frame design. And it's kind of like so don't get on your soapbox about shouldn't be included. Well, I'm not selling him, and yes. And you shouldn't sell items that are copyrighted at your flea market and trade shows, and none of you ever do that. I know nobody does that. Let's see here. Before I go any further down the path, just ordered the trackball mouse. Good, good. You'll love it. You will love it. All right. But if you guys are not using the art libraries, you're making life really hard on yourself. Really hard on yourself. Because here everything's grouped. I'm going to ungroup it. And I only want to have, I'll start with just, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Undo. Put it in line mode so you can grab everything you want. I'm going to start just with these. Bring that over here and get rid of those guys. So I'm starting with that basic shape and probably really only need the outermost piece right now, but we'll see. We'll look. Actually, no. Animals. We'll grab Snoopy and bring him in here. Center him up. And he's a little bit big because I need to have some verbiage around him, so I'll shrink that down. And then if I'm going to put any kind of sayings in there, text-wise, and I'm not going to go through the whole creating a whole design here. I'm just going to show you the how-tos. But if we got some verbiage here and say, okay, well, that can be bigger, well, I'll start making it bigger. And I want to curve it. The little blue dot over your text is your curve line. And you hover over that, left click, and you can start dragging down to curve it down or drag it up to make it curve up. But I'm going to put him like so. And one thing that a lot of people struggle with is the symmetry of that curve to make it match the rest of your design. If you were using a lot of people do this. If you've got a logo and it's a round logo and you have multiple circles like that, and you want to take and put your business name in that logo, see how that doesn't match the curve? I hold my shift button, select that, and center it up. It's closer to the H and the E than the rest of it. Well, if you select just your text again and you go over there to that and you see how you want to look to try and replicate the symmetry of that circle with the blue circle, the blue toolpath, with the rest of the design. And that'll give you more of a symmetrical look with the curvature of your text. But a lot of people get it kind of, at least they think they got it close, but that doesn't look right. But use that toolpath whenever you start dragging to look for even spacing between the top, the bottoms, and the sides, and that'll give you a symmetrical curve around your piece. So let's take that back over here. A little more text. And you say, oh, that's all I'm going to put on there. So you grab all that, and it can be just a wee bit bigger. And that's what you want to have engraved on your sign on the middle of the back piece. All right. Well, if that's just going to be the back piece only, then you need to grab the outermost layer and then everything you just created and say Control D, duplicate that, bring it over here, and there's your first layer. And this needs to be on a cut layer, so you'd put that on a cut path. That's ready to engrave and cut out, and that's the very first layer. That's the easy part. You no longer need this over here, but something like with the, like I said, I'm not selling Garfield, and I'm going to show you over here on my design what I've done so that you can take that out, but know exactly where to put your artwork so that it does not interfere with the layers as you build the piece. So you know that when you design this, that you're going to potentially have a piece that's going to be out here. In fact, what you need to do now is if you're going to do a mat, you need to create the mat around your piece here. So we really don't need all these extra layers and all these extra lines in here right now. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those. Get rid of those two. That one is what we've got for the outside piece. And if I want to come in here and do a 10 millimeter inward offset for the topmost layer, and this thing is doing it again to me. Go to millimeters, inches, millimeters, offset. There we go. Cancel. I don't know what's happened, but there we are in millimeters. And I want to do an inward offset of 10 millimeters. And say, okay. And select the outer one. Control D, duplicate it. That's a 10 millimeter offset out frame. That would be the topmost layer. All right. So if that's going to be the frame that you're going to see on the third layer, now I want to create a mat. Now the mat's going to be that same outside shape, but I want the mat to come in here an inch. I want it to be an inch past this piece. So I'm going to do an offset of 25 millimeters inward. And that gives me an inch mat. But I strongly recommend that if you're going to do, if you're just going to paint it and it's not going to be that big of a deal, then don't worry about this. But if you're going to do like I did here, where you want to put a little pattern or do something fancy with the mat, to make sure you don't have any alignment problems whenever you go to put all this together, you're going to want to increase the outer area of your artwork so that when you go to put them together, you don't have to worry about it not lining up just right. You'll have a little bit of an overlap in your artwork. So what I do is, if this and this is the size of that entire piece, I'm going to say Control D, duplicate that, and bring this over here and put it on a cut path. So right there is my three layers. There's the back layer, the mat, and the top frame. But now I need to go in here and create the area for my artwork, for if I'm going to do any artwork on this mat. So if I come to this one and I do an offset inward of 10 millimeters and put that on a black path, that's where the frame here would line up perfect, right? They would line up exactly where they one on top of the other. Well, I don't want it to be exactly one on top of the other. So I would actually probably only come in about 8 millimeters. So if I go outward 2 millimeters, that would give me the 8 millimeter offset, and delete that one. And then this one needs to be duplicated. Control D, duplicate it and put it on a black layer. And now when you put it in a fill mode, come on, fill, you can see there that cuts out the inner piece and cuts out the outer piece. And the black layer there is the area that you either would paint and or put some artwork in here to create a nice mat. And now you've got an overlap. If I group all this, group these, put that centered up. See there, you've got a slight overlap where the outer frame is going to come over and help hide where that artwork's at. So you get a really nice area whenever you overlap them. So undo that, put that back there, put that up there. So that quick and that easy, I've just created the 3 layers for that artwork. Now, I was talking about where does this need to go? Well, I've still got this over here. And this one, right? Actually, it's this, which should be this. Ungroup these. And I'm going to grab one of these, duplicate it, Control D, duplicate it, hold my shift button and select that and center it. And then I'm going to put this one on a toolpath. And that toolpath is the area that you need to put your artwork in. And you should save your file just like that. So we come back over here and look. Here is the artwork that I've created and have for sale. And that toolpath right there is so that you know if you want to delete this and make it whatever you want it to be, you need to keep it contained within that toolpath in order for it to work and all of everything else line up perfectly. So you're creating a copy or a duplicate of that innermost cut of your mat and put it over here and put it on toolpath. And now you've got your work area for your art. So there's 3 pieces, 3 layers to create the face of the frame. Any questions? Let's see here. We'll scroll back up here. All right, there's my arc. All right. Can you save actual Lightburn files in no. Libraries are artwork. They are not files. They are clip art, for lack of a better term. They're not complete files. Lightburn does not recognize them as the same way. And no, I can't. And Lyndon, I'll address yours too. So I think that's what you're talking about. But no, Sharon, libraries are library art and files are files. They don't save all the information. It's just the lines in Lightburn. It's just a piece of clip art and doesn't have the layers or any of that stuff saved. Well, I guess maybe it might save the layer that you put it in your file with. But no, they're not the same, and you cannot put a file. Well, take that. You cannot save a file in the library, but you can save the entire design you are working on in the library until you're ready to save it as a file. Because I do that all the time. And what I do is we turn off your comment. Over in my library file, to go all the way down to my bottom one, I have a WIP, W-I-P, which is short for work in progress. And there you can see I've got a bunch of different things in here. And if I was to click on one, let's see here, like this one here's, that looks like that's a complete file. But this was one of the early versions of the floating frame, and I forget who sent that to me. That might have, one of the viewers sent me that, and it's what inspired what you're getting ready to see. It's how I do the floating frames, but that is not a Lightburn file. That is still just a Lightburn artwork. But then you could take that and save it as a file. But in order, if you're working on something, you can select that entire thing, tell it to import the graphic from the project and put it in the library of your choice. but it's not technically a file. It is still just Lightburn art. So I guess technically you can save Lightburn. You could save if it was a completed design and it was ready to use, and you could save it into a library. But if you were going to share it with someone or sell it, like I do my files, you could only sell that to someone who has Lightburn, because it's a Lightburn art file, and your computer would not recognize it in any other software that I'm aware of except for Lightburn. Lyndon Ryers asked about, can I change the background color in Lightburn? If you're talking about my specific computer, because this come up the other night and I didn't, and I apologize to everybody who tuned in last week. I was fried. I was exhausted. I was completely physically drained, and you guys got my emotions all racked up there with your generosity at the end, and I about lost it. But I just cooked. But Patrick brought up, hey, man, turn off your nightlight. I'm like, what? Well, the processor that I use to allow me to toggle back and forth between different screens and software images, there's a flaw in it somehow, and it makes my screen of Lightburn look like I've got it in the night light saving mode. It's kind of a yellowishy looking thing, but I can't change it, and that's not in my settings because it's bright white to me. It's not in a night light screen saving mode or eye saving mode. It's a problem with the hardware that I've got. If you're talking about for your specific use, Lyndon, if you're wanting to change the background of Lightburn for your use, then yes, you can use a dark background. And let me get over to Lightburn. If you go to your settings and go in here to right here, use dark background, turn that on and say okay, then it'll do that. It'll give you a dark background instead of a bright white background. Now, I don't like that, and I don't know if that's what you were asking about or if you wanted me to try and fix mine, but mine I cannot change. The yellowy looking background that you're seeing right now is a result of my hardware and not a result of the software. Questions. Yeah, this though, Chris, mine is actually, it's something to do with the output. And another, this was another sore point in from a previous collaboration. I've got the Fill World L4 multi-form video mixer, and I got the Fill World brand because it was recommended quite highly from the other creators. But I went online and looked for the best buy on the Fill World L4, and I got it here, got it all hooked up, got it, and was using it. But that screen, that output, there's like 4 different outputs. No, yeah, 4 outputs and an SDI. But that output comes out yellow, and I can switch outputs around, and that one would no, this screen would no longer be yellow; it would be white. Everything coming out of this hardware comes out, and that one yellow. And in the settings for that output, I've tried to correct it and can't. And then I was belittled because the place I bought it from, I didn't get a real Fill World. I was told I got a counterfeit Fill World because I got it from one of the Chinese manufacturers, and that's the reason I'm having problems, is because it's not a real one. It works. It's just a little yellow, and it works. Okay. Now let's talk about the stand. The stand, the geometry, how to get that inclination, how to figure out your height, and all that good fun stuff. marking my spot with you guys, and we're going to flip back over here to Lightburn. So there are my 3 layers. Now I need to figure out how to make this stand. This really what I'm going to work on right now is this piece and how to get these lined up and get the angles for these. And it seems like it might be kind of tough, but it's actually extremely simple and very easy to do. So this is the backboard, the very back piece. And for right now, I'm going to Control D, duplicate that piece, bring it over here. And I want to have that anchor point that I'm going to attach my easels to come up to about midpoint on this piece and then down to each of these corners, because these corners are what I'm going to use to help with the alignment of it. Here, here, and here. That you following those contours will help me line it all up. And in fact, I don't think I went too high up on this one, just a little. You want to have a little bit come up on those corner edges there, so you've got a place to pinch it and squeeze it together. So what I did was create a toolpath and grab the center point and bring her to, well, it's not want to snap in for me. This overall piece is 529, it's 530. So if I say that the height is 530 divided by 2, that's the width. Stupid, not the height. 530 divided by 2. There we go. And now align that to the bottom. That's about midpoint. Select tool, select toolpath. And actually, so now that, and Control B for my Boolean. And which one do you want? You want that? Nope. You want that? Yep. That's the one you want. So that piece there is the lower half of that frame, the intersection of A and B. Now, I don't need that. You could use it that way, but if this is going to sit on your desk, then this is a view that you're going to see. But anybody walking up, they're seeing this. And I don't like the idea of having a great big piece that goes all the way across there. Kind of hide it, blend it in, and that's the reason for that shape. So with that selected, I go to my node editor tool. Come up here. In fact, in order to keep it uniform, there's a node. No, that's not a node. That's a tangent. That's a tangent off of, no, that is a node. There's a node there and the tangent going up, but there's not a matching node over here. It's down at the bottom. So what I do to keep it symmetrical, come up here with the selector tool, grab me a toolpath and bring it down here to the height that I want it to be at. I want to have, like I said, that little bit of corner down there. Now go back to node editor and put a node right there on that toolpath by hitting the letter I for insert. Come on to this side, the same intersection, hit an I for insert. Now I've got nodes in the same exact place. And up here, I'm going to hit a letter M for middle. Puts me a node right in the middle. Now I can select all of these nodes and hit the letter D for delete. Select all of these nodes and hit the letter D for delete. And that gives me that shape. But now I want to have this have some contour and some curves to it where it looks nice and fancy. So I'm going to come up here to this one, hover over the top of it and hit the letter S for smooth. And now I'm going to hit the letter C for corner. Now this is crucial. S for smooth gives it that curve, but then C for corner will anchor that point and allow me to move either side of that curve and it not affect the other side of the curve. And I'll show you what happens when you don't. So let's go back here. I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to hit the letter S for smooth. And right now that's just the smooth. It gives me the curve. And if I want to come down here and change this contour and bring this in, I can grab that and start pulling it in. But look what happens to the other side over there. It starts changing. It jacked that up. And if I grab this now and start pulling this in, now they're overlapping. It's not going to work. So undo. That's still smooth. Now I'm going to hit C for corner. Now that that's a corner, I can come in here and grab this and pull this in all I want to, and it doesn't affect the other side at all. The other side is perfectly stationary. And if I want to, I refer to these as tangents off of the node. I don't know what they really proper name is, but I call them little tangents. But if I want to have this curve be bulbous up here and have this come in, then you can grab that tangent, bring that out, and bring this one in. And see, you now start to create an S curve. And now if you're wanting to, and what I did to keep my symmetry, and this is my OCD, I'm crazy about wanting to keep everything symmetrical. So those tool paths are your best friend in the world when you're doing this. I'm going to grab a tool path from the side, and to grab those, you got your cursor, and you move your cursor over here to your numbered area on your X or your Y-axis. And when your arrow disappears and you get that flat line with the squiggly, that's where you grab one, bring it over. And I'm going to bring it right to the center where that node's at. And I'm going to now go back into node editing and say, I'm going to put this node on that center line right there. And I'm going to go back. Now that tangent, it's not actually a node, but that is going to be recognized, that position in Lightburn. If I come up here, go back, and you can only grab those with the selector tool. If I'm in node editing and I go up here and try to grab a tool path to bring down, it won't let me. You have to go back to your selector tool, grab one and bring it down. Now I'm going to come down that line, and I should be able to, let's see, go back to node editing, grab that. Okay, so there, it's not quite on that line, so that's why I didn't see it. So I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to put it, there we go, put it right there. Now let me move that. Nope, won't let me go back to selector tool. And when you go to your selector tool, that disappears. Go back to my selector tool, grab this, and as I come up the line, it should, I thought it did anyway. Maybe I just got lucky. I thought it would recognize that. But if it won't, that's fine. You don't need to go to that one. Just go to node editing and now move that to that intersection point. Then come over here to this one and drag it up there to match that one. And then if you want to get the other two top ones symmetrical, you bring it down to wherever you think they're at. Go to node editing. I got that one pretty darn close by guessing. And now what you need to do to get this true symmetry, perfect symmetry, come over here, grab that line right there and say Control D, duplicate it, and an arrow out. And whatever your movement settings are, I think I got mine at 10 millimeters. No, it's at 38 millimeters. Put it at 10 millimeters, say okay. And now I'll come back to that line and arrow over 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 4 times. Select it again, Control D, and arrow over 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And I don't know if that's going to be enough, actually, because I think the tangent's way out there. Let's look and see. But those were moved. And now that those are there, you can see how unsymmetrical or asymmetrical that is, how that's nice and comes, and that's the reason I'm all about my symmetry is under the right conditions, it'll show up and be glaring. So I'm going to bring that out another 20 millimeters, or actually one. I'm on now. Got to go to the arrow selector tool. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And bring that out another 1, 2, 3, 4. Now go back to that. Go back to the nodes and put that at that intersection, and put that one at that intersection. And now you've created a symmetrical piece. And it looks like the space shuttle or a nose or a whole bunch of different possibilities. But that shape there would be the piece that you would glue to the bottom of this. But now you need your slots and to go in there for your material, for your, where is it? There we go. We need our slots here for our easels. So I'm gonna come back over here and look for any kind of questions and or comments. All right, so there's my mark. Good, good, good. Hey, good. Lot 5s, 3s, 5s, 6s even. Lots of stuff being learned today. Love to see it. And question mark. Hey, Steve, the tangents that you call them are actually called handles. Okay, yeah. That's what you do. You grab the handle and move it around. Yep. And I think I have heard them called handles. I have. Couldn't you cut it in half? Yes, you could. You could do one side, cut it in half, and mirror to the line and flip it over. And like I say, there's only one way to do things in Lightburn. Only one way to do things in Lightburn. That's my way. You do it any other way, it's completely wrong, and it's going to blow up in your face, and you should never do anything except my way. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. There's 100 ways to do things in Lightburn. You can get there a ton of different ways, and no one. I tell people about how you see it. How do you get there? And yeah, you can, if you create one half of it and get that symmetry just right, you can save yourself all that work and trouble of having to recreate it again the second time by simply copying it and copying a long line. In fact, just for giggles, squirrel, we'll do that real quick because it is another way to do the same thing. And some of you may find it a whole lot simpler, a whole lot easier, or you've never seen this and you just didn't know it was a possibility. So let's see here. Let's see. Yeah, and Brad, and not a question, but Brad says that he needs all the practice he can get with node editing, like seeing both ways. And yeah, I like working with node editing. Can be intimidating for some folks, but if the more you do it and the better you get at it, it's actually, man, you can really accomplish a whole lot of stuff by actually using the node editing tool. All right, so let's jump back over here and go back over here. And I'm going to duplicate this piece, Control D, duplicate it, move it over here because this piece is a finished piece. This is what I want it to be. Let's take this piece and let's go over here and go back into node editing. And let's say I didn't bother with making this over here. I had this exactly the way I wanted it. I go to my toolpath, grab me one of these here, there. I don't know if I can cut with that or not, but actually I don't even have to cut it. If you go back into node editing and just make sure you've got a node right at the bottom, insert a node there, and then select all the rest of those in letter D for delete, letter D for delete. Keep zooming out and delete all those. You'll end up with a straight line. So you've got one piece there, half of it. And if I can get rid of that toolpath, oop, I didn't mean to do that. selector tool, select that and delete. So now you've got that. So you can say, okay, you could do Control D, and this is another example of just another way to do the same thing 2 or 3 different ways. You can say Control D, duplicate it, Control D, duplicate it, then use flip, and then arrow it over, and then Alt Shift H, move them together, and then weld them together. That didn't weld. Undo. Hold that and select that and weld. Don't know why she's, oh, because that's not a straight line. They're not touching down there. All right, undo. So let's get our toolpath, snap it to that top corner up there, and see there, it doesn't touch. So if I select just that piece, go to node editing, bring that node over to that toolpath, get rid of that duplicate that's on there. Now that's a perfect straight line. And that's because that node wasn't lined up with the top node when I did the cut in half. Now you can take that and say Control D, duplicate it, flip it, arrow it over, Alt Shift H, and weld should weld them together. Still not touching. And that's because it's not perfectly symmetrical. Undo. But I was going to show you what I wanted to do was show you the copy along a long line. So if you select that and the toolpath, is it up here? Yeah. Arrange. Off buoy. Lay those tools. So I wasn't prepared to show you this because I don't use it that often, but you can copy a long line. And then because I don't use it enough, I don't know where it's at in here. Tools, no, arrange, rotate, no, scale, align, distribute, next, dot. Copy a long path, no. Ding dong, ding dong. Okay. You know. Where's it at, Chris? Copy along or along, flip it around the line. Where's it at, Chris? Anybody out there use that all the time? I never use it. Copy. No. Close path. Auto join. Oh, mirror across line. There. And that's got the shortcut up top. Okay. Mirror across line, which is this shortcut here, which is also this tool right here. Mirror across line. So if you select that and you select your line and mirror across line, it'll flip it for you and position it right across the line. Yeah, not copy along path. It's mirror across line. And then you should be able to take two, weld them together and see if that welds up. Nope, it's not welding. I don't have that perfectly symmetrical, but that mirror across line is a handy tool, and I should be using it more often than duplicating it, flipping it, and having to realign it, because the mirror across line is just going to take it and do that automatically for you. It's going to take that shape and flip it right across that line, and they're going to be perfectly lined up with each other. The reason they're not welding together is because the nodes are not a perfectly straight line down the middle, because I didn't design this piece with the intent of doing it that way. So when you're doing your node editing, if you was to make sure that you were drawing and when you created that one half, if you're creating one half of a design with the intent of doing the mirror and flipping instead of worrying about trying to do it all at one time with the node editing, make sure you've got one line that's perfectly perpendicular, it's perfectly straight. Then you got that done, you created one side of it, then you're going to take and mirror across line, create that line that goes down there, select the two, and use that shortcut up in the top area of the toolpath up there. And I'll show you that again. So delete that. In fact, just to make it show you that, I'm going to draw out a perfect square. And we're going to actually, wanted to try and show you a shape though that you really see. All right. I'm going to shape property. I got to convert it to a shape. Convert to a path, and then shape prop. No, stupid. All right. Do a polygon. Polygon. And we got this squirrel going crazy on us now. All right. So I've got that polygon, that triangle. I'm going to rotate it. Let's see. There. All right. Now, if I take this toolpath and I bring it right there, get it right on there, that's a perfect straight line down through there. Now, to copy a long line or mirror, that's this one up here. You see right now it's grayed out. It's grayed out. You can't select it. You can flip it, mirror it vertically. You can mirror it horizontally. But this one is grayed out. It's not an option, but that's mirror the current selection across a line. Well, you have to have the selection selected. Hold your shift button and select that line. And now it's no longer grayed out. It's an option. Click on it, and it will mirror that right across the line. And now with those being perfect, you should be able to, and if I move the toolpath out of the way, you can see they're not joined, but I should be able to take 1 and 2 and weld those together. And it's not. I don't know why she's not welding up. But mirror across line is another way to accomplish what we were doing if you only wanted to design one side of it. But I like playing with my nodes. I like playing with all the little nodes and stretching things out. And because if you notice, when you're doing node editing, if you pay attention, even on something that looks like it's already a symmetrical shape. In fact, my piece that I just did is a perfect example. If we look at this piece, you've seen me create it, and I did it and made it as symmetrical as possible. Then if I look at the nodes, you'd expect all the nodes to be perfectly symmetrical in every which way and every placement. But if we look here, there's no nodes coming down that curve right there, but there's a node in the middle over here. So even though those were created and tried to be symmetrical about it, Lightburn doesn't necessarily make the node placement symmetrical. So I like playing with it and putting everything exactly where I want it. Yeah, Chris, that's you do the node editing and delete that middle line and do them. That would work. And I didn't see that till just now. Let's see here. Go back up here. Thank you, Moses. Bless you, sir. Greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. All right. Looking for any questions or comments before we go in here to the placement of all those. Oops, wrong one. What's John saying? Maybe you need to cut the vector line, then mirror over the line. No, and who else made Scott says that they have to overlap to weld. They don't have to overlap, but they don't need to go past each other, but they do have to be right on top of each other. And there's no room for any error or any. And a lot of when I'm making slots and tabs, a lot of times I will overlap them knowing that they'll weld up, and then use resize slots and tabs to put them back to what I want them to be. But, okay. The numbering system, Tommy, you were a little bit late joining us. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming. And the fact that you're not aware of it, you don't know what's going on. Thank you. Thank you. What I ask folks to do, Tommy, is every time they learn something new, a technique or a tool, or they something that they're seeing is new to them, and they recognize that, hey, I could probably use that, they'll drop a number in the comments. And each time they learn something new, they increase their number. So like Sharon dropped in here a number 5. That's telling me that so far in this stream, Sharon's seen 5 new things to her, not 10, 5 new things to her that she feels were informative, worth her time, and she's glad she's here because she's learned 5 new things. And I ask that folks do that just so that it keeps the 2 reasons. It keeps the comment field moving and rolling, and that lets YouTube know that people are actually watching and contributing to the stream. And the second reason, it lets me know that what I'm sharing with you guys, it has been valuable information and people are learning from it. So that's what the numbers are for. Okay. Now let's create the easel. And then what some people feel like is the tricky part, the angle. How do we get there? All right. Before I do that, Moses popped up with a question. I know this is a dumb question, but how do you flip an image? I always use my mouse in the corner of the image to turn it. I think I know what you're talking about. How do you flip an image? Well, there's a couple. You can flip and or rotate. And if we go back over here, switch, turn you off, turn that comment off. So this image right here, if I go back into the selector tool to get the nodes off, if you want to flip it, if you, excuse me, you can use the mirror tools up here, and this will flip it horizontally, like so. But if you're needing to rotate it, you can use the greater than and less than keys, or as some folks like to say the period comma key. But if you look at your keyboard at your period comma key, the symbols above it are a greater than and less than. And if you treat the greater than and less than as an arrow, if you have that selected and you press less than, it will rotate it 90 degrees. You use greater than, it points to the right, it'll rotate it 90 degrees to the right, 90 degrees to the right, and go rotate it all the way around. So that's rotating it instead of flipping it. But you can use the mirror keys up here to mirror it horizontally or vertically. Totally unrelated, but yeah, this is a quick answer. I'll do it. Andy's asking, do you want to explain your AC issues and the loose wire? So for those who were, last week I was struggling so bad, I didn't have air in here. I was exhausted, physically exhausted, and it was miserable in here. My AC wasn't working. And with the way life is going for me right now, I was like, okay, just one more thing. So I was prepared for whatever. I didn't know what it was going to be. Turns out it was nothing more than one single wire coming loose from the squirrel cage motor, the blower motor, the motor that powers the squirrel cage fan to blow the AC. One wire came loose, and that one power wire was a main power supply wire that shut everything down. Don't know how it got loose. There was no reason. In fact, when you looked at it, it was craziest thing. That one wire that was supposed to be attached to the power wire for the blower motor was wrapped up in electrical tape, and it had a wire nut on it and laying off to the side. and it was a perfect clean cut when you pulled all that off and looked at it. And that wire was what's supposed to be attached to another wire, and it had been working. It was working now. All I had to do was hook that wire back up, and it works. So it's like somebody came in here in the middle of the night and knew exactly which wire it was they needed to disconnect, cut it, tape it all off, and tape. I don't know. I have no idea. Gremlins. I don't know. But however it happened, was able to identify it, put it back together. I got air. So, yeah, Stephen, hang tight. Finish watching the rest of this live, and then you want to go back and watch the replay, because I addressed your issue right out of the gate before everybody showed up. It's an easy solution. You'll love it. You'll be able to use it multiple times, but I addressed your concern in your email before I dove into this, waiting for everybody to get here. Unfortunately, you didn't make it before I went over it, but your solution is here, and it's easy peasy. I got lots of squirrels. We know that, but no, this was not nibbled on. It wasn't burnt off. You know, a lot of times if you got a wire connection, if it was an improper connection, they overheat and they can melt and break away. And there was no melting of the wire. There was, and it was, everything was clean cut. The rubber was clean cut. The copper was clean cut. I mean, it was a nice, clean, precise cut that was taped and a nut on it. I don't know. I'm not even going to worry about it, because the problem's resolved, and I fixed it with, without having to spend any money on it. So it's just, I like to trials come my way, and I will get stressed sometimes, but I don't worry about them. The solution is going to be what the solution is, but I try not to get worried about it and keep a good attitude. And my uncle likes to make the comment that I was born with a golden horseshoe up my butt, because it seems to be that I have when it comes to issues and problems, and I'm one of the luckiest people he knows, but for whatever reason, I've just been, my mother says that I'm just blessed. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm fortunate enough to have, and maybe it is just the attitude. It's like, okay, AC's not working. Let's go find the problem. If I got to buy a system, No, it's just a connection. I don't know why it works that way. No rats, nothing. This one was, if I was to dwell on it, how it got that way is irrelevant, but it was taped up with a nut on it, and there was no evidence that it was ever connected to the other wire. It was crazy. All right. Enough about that squirrel. Let's go back to designing this angle and putting the tabs on it and getting all that alignment and get that geometry right. Because it's not that difficult. Switch. All right. So I've got this piece. This piece is no longer needed. Now I need to design this guy, right? Well, I know that I'll start with a rectangle. And I'm going to convert it to a path, because I'm going to need to be able to get my nodes. And I'll undo that. If I'm drawing out a rectangle and I go to node editor, you don't see any nodes. Anytime you draw out anything from your using your rectangle tool, be it a square or a rectangle, it will not show you nodes. You have to right click, select it, right click, and convert to a path. And then once you convert it to a path, you'll see your nodes. And since I'm going to be using my node editor, I needed to convert that to a path so I get the nodes that I need. All right, I know that I need to have a straight line here for my tabs to stick out and protrude from, that are going to stick into the back of this piece. But this side over here, and I want to have a bunch of contours to it. So I'm going to hover over this one right here. Actually, I clicked on it and turned it red, and I'm going to hover over it. You don't have to click on it. Just hover over it and hit the letter D for delete. Letter D. And now I've got the triangular shape. Now I can start moving this around and create the shape that I want it to have. Do I want it to look something like that? Do I want it to have that curve? In fact, I'm going to make a copy of this one and bring it over here so you can see. Control D, duplicate that, bring it over here. So now you can see the shape that I used on this one. And it's a matter of what do you want it to look like. I didn't want it to come to a point here and sit flush on that. So I'm like, okay, I want to do a little bit more. I came in here, and this is all personal preference because this is completely arbitrary. The design of that backside of that easel is just a matter of aesthetics. What do you want it to look like? And this is a good chance for you to play with the node editor. So I come up here and put a node letter I there and letter I here and delete this one. And then took that. Oh, didn't want to do that. Undo. See how by not making that a corner, it distorted the whole piece. So I'm going to undo, come back here, hover over this one, and hit the letter C for corner. And now when I come in here and grab that, I can move just that piece out and it not affect that side of it. And then you can play with those handles and do what you want. But I liked that a little bit and said, okay, that's something similar to what I did over here. Now, this side, though, this is crucial. This backside is purely aesthetics. But if you want to create the floating frame to where when you're looking at it, you don't see any part of the frame hanging down. And this one, I had to go in and modify because you can actually still see it. You do need to know how it's going to position on your artwork. So what you need to do is grab this piece. Let's bring her over here. And do you want it to be lined up right at the very top of that piece? Then you would put that point right on top of that point. Say, okay. And you know that you made this from a copy of the actual frame. So there's the bottom of your frame. So you don't want this piece to hang down any lower than these pieces. And here's the other thing you're going to think about. If you're going to do a double piece, a double easel like this, then you wouldn't actually want to line it up with the center point. It'd be out here. So I'm going to create my rectangles for my inserts, for my tabs. And when I do this, I usually work with material that is about 2.78 millimeters thick. And I didn't do all this proportional, so that's not going to work. I didn't worry about my, and actually, I can correct that now before I start doing it. Because up to this point, proportions, the sizing really didn't matter. All of this is scalable. When we scale it down where I had an inch mat to begin with, it's not going to be a full inch now, but you could scale all this down. But, and this is one thing I probably should have thought about, because this is what I think about whenever I'm creating my design. When I'm creating a design that I'm going to sell to folks, sell to you, I do it with the try and get it all on a 12 by 12 piece of material. And over here, I just started drawing out stuff, and that's way, way too big. So now when I take all of this and start shrinking it down, to an appropriate size, which is all of this. If I start shrinking it down to where it's going to fit, let me do that. Grab all that, bring it over here. So that's still considerably larger. By the time I shrink this down to where I know that it will all fit on that 4x6 piece of material, about like that right there. Now, when I check the size of this outer frame, it's only 2.73 millimeters. It's not 10 millimeters. So I didn't follow one of my rules. When you're designing a project, design it at the smallest possible size. Design it small. Then you can always blow it up. But as you see here, I didn't design it at the appropriate size to begin with. And when I shrink it down to get it to a 12 by 12, ain't gonna work so good anymore. But right now we're talking about techniques, and the techniques are going to be the same. But when you're creating your design, try to start with working with the material you're going to put it in. Like I said, once you design it from that usable size, you can always make it bigger. So I dropped the ball on that one, but the techniques are all the same. Go back. Say okay. All right. Now when I look at this and I tell it to be width-wise is 2.78 millimeters, and I do 10 millimeters high, so that is about right. And I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to duplicate that, Control D, duplicate it. I've got my Move tab at 10 millimeters. So if I select one and arrow down one time, that's going to put it right up against each other. Arrow it down again, that puts it 10 millimeters apart. Then I'll grab both of those, group it, Control D, duplicate it, and then use my left arrow to move them. I didn't duplicate it. Control D to duplicate it, and now arrow those apart. Grab both groups, hold my shift button and select that piece and tell it to go to the, I didn't have those grouped as individuals. Go back, grab that group, and group them. And now hold my shift button, select that and tell it to bullseye. And so now that is positioned my slots for that back piece. All right, so those slots are in position. Now what I do is I'll drag me a toolpath over here and get it right there in the very center of that. And then if I grab this and put it at the right height and then arrow that over 5 millimeters, that puts it on that center line there. So now I know this piece, there's where it's going to be. If it goes any lower than that, it's going to be hanging out under my artwork. So I don't want that to happen. So I can grab that, go into Node Editor, grab all of those nodes that are on that bottom part, and just start arrowing them up. Arrow them up and get them above that point right there. But that takes care of that piece. But this right here needs to be below this where it's going to snap into the base. So now what I need to do is grab me another toolpath, put it right here to the very bottom. Now I'm going to go into my node editor and I'm going to put me a node right. Actually, I'll go middle. So it's right there in the middle, and I might do it again, middle. No, well, we won't worry about that. Go back to node editor. Come on, delete that one. D, letter D, delete it. Now grab all of those nodes and arrow those back down to about there to where it's right at that toolpath. And now I can take this line and give it some curvature like that to help get it up and away so that that's hidden behind that piece. And that right there is going to be having the tip of that right on the surface of your material. Now, obviously, you don't want it touching that, and it won't be. You're going to set it up that way. But what we're getting ready to do is we're getting ready to add the angle, because when you look at this sitting level, that's kicked back. And with that kick back, that's lifting that up a little bit. You might give it another millimeter or two, and I'll do that here. Go ahead and give it a little bit extra clearance, but when you kick that back, it's going to help pick it up off the face of that. Now let's look here. Did I even mark the last place? I bet I didn't. Nope, I didn't, but that's okay. Steven, we talked about that. You're going to watch that for replay for how to fix that. No sleepwalking, Jack. And if I was, I sure wouldn't go in and tear up my AC. Let's see here. Question marks. Nope. Okay. All right. Now mark this spot. Okay. Now go back to Lightburn. And as I said, my movement tabs, shift arrow is 1 millimeter. So I'm going to come down here, grab those bottom two, and I'm going to hold my shift and the arrow 1, 2. We'll give it 2 millimeters of additional clearance. 2 millimeters, not a whole lot. But now I've got that in position. That's lined up. And that's where those those tabs need to be on this piece. So if I take this and just use my arrow key to arrow straight over to the right, then I take those are all grouped as 4s. If I ungroup them once, that'll give me that pair, duplicate that, and arrow those over. And this is what I talked about a minute ago about not worrying about your tab height when you're creating tabs, because they do need to be right up against each other to weld or over the line to weld. And to keep from having to fight about placement, because a lot of times if you're doing a bunch of tabs, you might have 4 out of 5 that weld, and there's that one that just doesn't want to add. Don't even fool with that. Take them all past it. Go and then fix it this way. I know I need those tabs to be 2.78 millimeters when I'm designing. So if I've got that and they're way inside there, that's fine. They're positioned where they need to be. I'm going to hold my shift button and grab that and weld them together, and then go straight into my tools and resize slots and selection, tab height. And I don't even know what that is. Doesn't matter. I'm in my old material. I'm just going to start reducing it in there. Now it recognizes it. As soon as it recognizes it, I'm going to tell it the new material is 2.78 and say, okay. And now that just fixed those tabs to the exact height that I need to be. They're positioned right. And those are done, right? Well, where do you get the angle at? Well, I'm getting ready to show you. You take this piece, you select it. Now, this is user preference. This one is mounted at 12.5 degrees. I've done some at 15 degrees. I've done some a little bit more, but I found that I like 12.5 degrees of rotation, or an angle of 12.5 degrees, better than most. You may want it to be a little bit more inclined, and also depending on how heavy your material is, are you going to do the single layer? Are you going to do the 3-layer base? The more you give it some incline, the more you lower your center of gravity and make it less likely to want to topple forward. But 12.5 degrees is what I use and what I use here. And I'm going to show you how you get that bottom tab set up so that you get your angle. So you got that piece right there. It's selected. Right here is your rotate tool. I'm going to go up here and tell it to rotate 12.5 degrees. And it rotated that. There's my angle. There it is. Done. Well, how do I get that all squared up? Simple. Grab your toolpath. Come right there to the bottom corner. Get it on that bottom corner right there. I need a 10 millimeter by 2.78 tab. So it's 10 millimeters wide and 2.78 high. And that's got to go up there to that one. And I'm going to take it above the line. I'm going to take this piece here, go in my node editing tool, and I'm going to grab this node right here, just that corner one, and drag it down to the line. Now I've drug that down to there. I look at the contours. It's still what I want. Maybe I want. And the handles or the tangents, see how this is sticking out proud past the line? Well, that gives it a little bit of a rounded. If I bring that down at least to the line, that keeps that curve a little bit. I like it better that way. I like the handles being at least on there or inside. I don't like it when they're proud. I don't like to have a bulbous and then come back into the curve. Again, it's aesthetics. It's strictly what you like. But I put that there. And then what I look for is I can go back to my selector tool. I can select that toolpath, get rid of it, come back to there, go to node editor, and I'm going to put a middle node in here. So I'm way over here, but if I hit the letter M for middle, it'll put the node right in the middle of that. Now I can come back to my selector tool, grab that square, bring it down here, and I'm going to come in here tight and grab right there where I get my circle on my crosshair, and I can come up here and scroll on that line, and right there's the middle of that. Now I will arrow it up a little bit so it's overlapping, weld them together. Tools, resize slots and selection. No idea what that old material thickness was or what that is. It's okay. I'm going to increase it. But if you don't want to search for it, in fact, maybe I need to decrease it. Don't know. Oh, I got to go tab height, stupid. There it is. And 2.78 and done. So now, when that sits in there, that's going to sit flat onto the base, but now that's rotated at 12.5 degrees. You need two of those. Control D, duplicate it. So now you've got your easel. Delete that. You've just created that. There's all three pieces. Now you just need your base. And for my single base, single layer, I just took that single piece there, Control D, duplicated it, bring it down here, use my greater than key or less than, anyway, rotate it one time, 90 degrees. I'll come up here and I'm going to select, I don't even need to do that. I can just come down here and just draw them because these are going to be the 2.78 by 10 millimeter because the 2.78 is the nominal thickness of the material I use, and 10 millimeters. And I'm going to say Control D, duplicate that. And I need to arrow it over 10 millimeters apart. Let's make sure that my settings are 10 millimeters still. Yep, they are. So take that, move it over one time, 10 millimeters. Those are good. Now I can grab that pair, group them together, hold my shift button and stick that in the center. And those are now placed in the center. Those two right there will snap into that. Those four will snap into those. That's glued to the center of the back of that. That's on top of that. That's on top of that. You got a 3-layer frame with a floating easel. So that wasn't that difficult. If we hadn't got lost with all the squirrels, we'd have been done 20 minutes ago within the 90-minute time frame. But that easily we created the frame for the floating piece. Now we're an hour and 50. I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes. We're going to push it to 2 hours. I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes showing you how I set up all of the paw prints inside there. And if you can notice, in fact, let's go over to the website. In fact, let's see here. Yep, there it is. I just dropped a link in the comments that will take you to the Hobo with Wood site and have the switch. Thank you. There's the product, but I wanted to show you here. See how the paw prints are all in a random orientation. No paw print. Well, I say no two are the same, but that one and that one look like they're identical. Those are very close, but they're random positions. And another reason, and in fact, I'll show you the screw up I did. See how the tips right there? Those tips extend below the face of the frame. That was my prototype. That's what, I build these things. I design them and I build them before I ever publish and put the site of the file out there for you guys to get your hands on, because I try to find as many of the problems as I can and correct them so that you don't run into what I run into whenever I put them together. But I want to show you this random orientation on this paw prints. And this is also another reason why you want to design it at its smallest possible size. Because if you design it too big and you use little bitty paw prints when you make it big, when you shrink it down, now they're going to be micro paw prints. So design it small. Always create your designs at its smallest possible way that you think they're going to be used. Let's look and see if there's any questions from the last. Okay. Oops, wrong button. Oh, Chris. Yeah, no. I was not going to be teaching center of gravity calculations. Let's see. Question. Do you add kerf for your tabs on this one? I did not add any kerf because two reasons. When you add kerf to the inner slots, those inner rectangles, it's adding kerf horizontally and vertically. But when on the design, in fact, well, I'm not going to go into showing all that, but it shrinks that rectangle in all four sides when you add kerf. But when you add the kerf for the tabs, when you cut it out, you can only effectively add kerf but you can't do it all four sides. It's going to make it wider. It becomes a little bit problematic. I always have problems when I do that. They always want to be too tight. They don't want to work right because you're shrinking it in two directions. Then you almost have to think about, okay, well, I need to only add half the kerf for those, but I need to add twice the kerf for the perimeter. So that's one reason I don't add kerf to these. The other reason I don't add kerf to these is because, as I told my patrons whenever I did this piece, that centerpiece has got 4 layers of the triple thick glaze on it. Well, there's no tabs on that. But the other pieces that do have the tabs on them, they have multiple coats of lacquer spray on those. And probably like 2 or 3 coats of lacquer on each of those. So by the time I get it all lacquered up and I put the finish on it before I assemble it. And by the time I get all the finish on there and get it nice and slick, then I go to put them in that extra coating, because it's sprayed. Both sides of those are sprayed with 2 or 3 coats of lacquer. And that makes up for what little bit of play is in there. And it is a snug enough fit. But if you're not putting finish on it, it might be a little bit sloppy. So there's that. And I just recognized something whenever I looked at the back of this about that design. We'll talk about it quickly as we move on. But no, I don't add kerf to these particular pieces. Okay, so mark this. Switch back over here. Switch. And switch back to Lightburn. All right. So let's take this piece, rotate it back, and I want to rotate it back. So I need to do negative 12.5 degrees. So negative 12.5, not 125, negative 12.5. That puts it back vertical. Now, if I take this and put it back to where it lines up with those slots, a minute ago, I took this top point to this top point. Well, that's not where this is going to line up. This is going to line up here. In fact, it's going to line up. If we move this into here like that, that's actually where it would line up. Get that snap to that corner. There we go. So there's the top. So I need to go into my node editor and bring, I'll go in and select. I don't want to get those in the square. So we'll grab all of these, hold my shift button and grab all of these. And now arrow it down until I get right about the top of it. Right about there. So there should be where she lines up with the top of that. And the other I lined up with the bottom whenever I did the other. So now rotate it back 12.5 degrees. Control D, duplicate it. Get rid of that one because that one's too big. And now you've got two that are the right size. All right, now let's talk quickly about the random orientation and artwork. So the black layer is going to be where you're going to put your artwork. And so I can go back to my cuts and layers and either tone down the red so you don't see it as much by turning off the output, or you can simply say, don't show it. And now you see just your black piece here. Now, that time I used Snoopy. So if I used artwork and I've got a paw print and my pet feeder, doggy paw print, add that, and I need to put it on the black layer so we can see it. There it is. Come up here. Let's rotate it where it's standing up straight. Make sure she's grouped, and it is. Now, that's way too big because if I try to put one on there, you don't even see one. So if I shrink her down, and that's still too big because if I put one here, I want to be able to see another hole in here. So I'm going to bring it down to where you've got room to have multiples in here. And this is why you design small. So if this is 10 millimeters, and let's see if it is 10 millimeters. No, it was supposed to be an inch. And we're not even going to worry about that now. But you design at smallest possible piece. That way, when you blow it up, it's not a problem. Going shrinking it creates a problem. Just like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He had all kinds of problems. All right. So if this is your smallest possible design use, then you make that small as you want it to be. Then you're going to bring this and say, align it to the top and to the left. So now it's as high as that would be and as far to the left as it would be. And then I take it, I've got my move arrow at 10 millimeters. I'm going to come over 10 and up 10. So now I know that I'm well on beyond past it. I go over to my array tool. And now I'm going to create an array large enough to fill this entire area. So I'm going to give it my columns and make sure that I go past it. And then I'm going to create my rows. And why? Oh, I've got this one at padding between edges, and this one I had padding center to center because of the way I used it previously. So turn on my padding between edges. And now start increasing. All right, she's not working with me. Start again. Array, padding between edges, between edges. Y spacing is way too high. That's why. Give it the same. There we go. So I'm starting out with the same X and Y spacing of 4 millimeters. And that's really not enough. But I'll show you how you can see that in a minute. We'll keep making this. You want to be able to cover that whole area. And now you can look, see how you only barely got 1 or 2. Start decreasing your X and Y spacing. There's 2. And now you're starting to fill that up and it's starting to look pretty good. Now turn on your random orientation. Or before you even do that, shift by half. Turn on shift by half. That's starting to look better. But now when you turn on random orientation, it starts twisting them in all 100 different directions. And this key number right here, this changes the orientation. Every time you select a different key number, it changes how they're rotated. So that's looking pretty good. But see what happens when I change my X and Y spacing? I don't have enough of them yet. So now start increasing my columns and rows again and say okay. And I'm going to tell it to group the results. Group the results and select the results. Turn both of those on and say okay. Now I'm going to actually make sure that these are grouped. I don't know if my frame or my mat was grouped or not. So they're not. So grab both of those, group those together. I'm going to, now this is crucial. Those are right now are just 2 engraved lines to create that. Those are not the cut lines. Those are engraved lines. And we need those in order to be able to make the end result what we want it to be. So but when we use them in the Boolean tools, they'll disappear. So I'm going to duplicate them. Duplicate. So now there's 2 sets of those sitting there. And I'm going to put one of them on the red toolpath, the T1 toolpath, and turn that off so you don't even see it anymore. It's there, but we don't need it right now. But if I select our group there and hold my shift button and select our array and Control B for our Boolean assistant and see which one of those do we want. Do we want a union? No, we don't want that. Do we want that intersection? Well, that kind of works, but that works even better. And we definitely don't want that. The reason that we don't want this, let's see, intersection. I can't zoom in. Actually, that's what we want. We want the intersection because if I go back here to A subtract B, I'll show you what happens. Say okay. Put it in fill mode. Well, this will work. But see how that's an open pawl right there? If I turn on my T1 toolpath, I can come down here and grab that T1 toolpath and put it back on the black layer. Got to grab it. Undo. Grab the T1. Not letting me grab it. Turn off the black layer. Grab that, put it on the black layer. Turn the black layer back on. And now see it inverts it. It inverts it and closes those all up. And that's why we needed the duplicate. Now, if I go back to all the way back to there, and we select that, hold shift and select that, and Control B, and look at the intersection, and say okay, and you put that on the black layer, So that fills it. That works, but you don't have an engraved demarcation line. But if you turn that back on and you put that on the black layer, watch what happens. It won't let me select it. Select that, put it on black layer. It'll invert it again. So, and you could eliminate that problem by just simply, and this is only if you want to have that engraved area around, and you don't, depending on how you set up your mat, the inner piece is going to be cut out. So you don't need that inner line for a demarcation line. And if you do like I suggested earlier, where we did the mat with a 2 millimeter overlap, so it's actually past the frame, you really don't even need that demarcation line for the inside either. So the intersection would work. The intersection would work. Like that. And you would not need that other duplication. There's just another example of there's more than one way to accomplish the same end result. So we're back to there, and we turn back on the cut path. So there you go. You're going to have that cut out. So you'll have a nice dark cutout path there. This is going to be overlapped by your frame. So if I grab those two, they're already grouped, hold my shift button and put that there and bullseye it. You can see what I'm talking about. So we designed it so that there would be an overlap and you don't need that demarcation. So if you do intersection, it will close them up and you can get a fill result, and those would be hidden. So that works. Are you scratching your head as much as I am with this one? All right. Got to go. All right. If you're already gone, thank you for being here, Sharon. Bye, Sharon. Bye, Sharon. Question mark. And this is probably, let's see, if you wanted the paw print in the middle around border, can you do the same way you did it? If you wanted a single paw print, if you wanted just a single paw print instead of having, and Stephen, if you're still here, this would be a flashback to what your question was. If you wanted to do a single paw print, you could accomplish that. And let's take a look at it. Turn you off. All right. So if I select this and this, that's not what I want. Undo. We'll go back. Take that off. There you go. That's what I want. Oh, this one. No, I don't. Got to go all the way back to where I can grab that tool path. There. Okay, so this tool path, I don't want to move that one. I want to duplicate it. Control D, duplicate that. So I want to get the exact same piece that was the size of the mat. We're going to get rid of this guy here. We don't need him anymore. So let's measure that. Take our ruler and measure, hold our shift key to draw a straight line across to there. That's 7.4 millimeters. And simply because my brain is fried already, 7.4 divided by 2, it's 3.7 millimeters is half. So Stephen, if you're still with us, if this oval, or this was your oval, come in here to your, grab your outside piece, do an offset of 7 point, or whatever did I just say, 3.7 inward. I don't know why it looks like that. Something screwy there. I've got some strange things happening with my offset tool that I've not ran into until today. Delete that. Let's try this one. It's because it was a group. Stupid. Ungroup that. Grab just the outer one. Do an offset inward of 3.7. There we go. So now that puts it right in the middle. And now that's right in the middle. If you wanted to do a single paw print, rotate it to where she's standing upright. There we go. And shrink her down to where it's going to be a appropriate size. And we want to make it, because remember, your outer piece is going to be overlapping this by 2 millimeters. So thinking about that, that's going to determine on where that center line is. So if you're going to do that, this actually would need to come in, offset it inward by 2 millimeters. And then that toolpath we just did a minute ago isn't right, because there's where your overlap's going to be. That's the overlap. So you're going to determine the size of your paw print based on that position. So there to there, straight line is 5.5 millimeters, give or take, 5.4, 2.7. So we're going to come in here and create another offset of 2.7 millimeters. And that puts it in the center of those two. Now you grab that, shrink it down to an appropriate size, snap it right on the middle of that line. And now this, Stephen, if you're still, yep, you're still here. So here is where you were wanting to do a circular array around your oval. Well, you don't use circular array. You're going to do copy along path. So you've created a path in here that's the exact center of the width of your two ovals. Select your circle that you want to use for a hole for sewing, then select the path you want to copy it along, and tools, the tools, or is it, no, it's arrange. Is range? Yeah, arrange, copy along path. And then you get to tell it how many you want to set up, or you can tell it to do spaces between copies. And we're going to use spaces between copies. And if you tell it you want 3 millimeters between copies, it's going to put those circles 3 millimeters apart from each other. But that's not enough for this particular one. We're going to increase it, go to 5, 6, 7. That gives me an unusual gap right there. 7. That looks mo better. And say, okay. Now, also, you notice how these are all pointed straight up. They're all perfectly pointed to the top. If you turn on rotate copies, it's going to rotate it around the path. So it starts out pointing up, then it makes a turn, and makes a turn again, makes a turn again. It follows the path. So rotate copies or have it straight up and say, okay. And then you could have a single paw print, or Stephen, that's how you get your sewing, get all of your circles on that path and space them out in your desired spacing. All right, so we went 15 minutes longer than I really even like to go. I think that took care of everything about this design, how to set it up. It's really not hard to do, and they're fun to do. I'm not even sure how to use Jer. I don't know how to pronounce it because I'll butcher it because I'm a redneck and I don't know anything about them names. And O'Grady. I like that look too. I like that single piece, that single paw print around there. Wasn't something I would have even thought about doing. I like that. I like that look a lot. Now, the one thing about doing it when on the copy along path, I can get that spacing to where it looks good, and you want to look at where your starting point is and where your end point is, because that's where you had that strange gap until I went back and changed it again. But what I don't like about it is, and this is my ACDC, my ADHD kicking in. It's not symmetrical. And take a look. See that paw print's right at the bottom? Those are kind of in the corner. There isn't anything at the top. and those don't quite make it to the corner. So it's not perfectly symmetrical. 9 out of 10 people won't notice it, but I did. But I do like that look. Oh, it's Jeremy. Okay. It's Jeremy, but other groups had a Jeremy, so I went with Jer. Okay. Haha. Jer. Okay. Very good. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out. I hope you learned a little something. I don't have any free files giveaway, but this is a very, very easy file. You can start out with one outline. You don't even need a whole frame. I used my frames as inspiration to get the design of the ultimate shape of it. You can create one outer perimeter shape, and then everything's based on that. You're doing all inward offsets of everything from then on. You do a 10 millimeter offset to get your top layer frame. Then I did a 1 inch or 25 millimeter offset to get the mat for the frame. And then there is no offset for the third layer. So that's your 3 layers. You've got your outer shape. That's layer 1. 25 millimeter inward offset is your mat. 10 millimeter offset is your third layer. 1, 2, 3, done. The trickiest part of it, when it's not that tricky, is setting up your angle and getting those pieces set up so everything's hidden. You don't, because that's the beauty of the frame, that easel, the floating frame or that floating piece there, is not seeing any of it from the front. And that's why you want to have it as close to this as possible. That's why I only come down and lowered it by one or 2 millimeters, and then did the incline. That keeps it close to it, but enough for people to see that it's not touching. But with it that close, it helps hide any of that easel from the front. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out. I did not work today, so I was fresh as a daisy. Kind of. Anyway, I did not want to repeat of last week. And again, I apologize for last week, but I've worked too much, too long, too hard. And that's why I only got one video out this week. And that may be the norm until I get past this remodeling. Thank you to all of my gold patrons. I strongly suggest that even if you like this file, you've seen how much work goes into it. The 3 layers, the top 3 layers, piece of cake. But then going in and setting up the easels and the inclination, all that. If you went to Hobo with Wood and bought this file, then you can create all the artwork you want. Now you know how to change up your paw prints, take cat prints out, and do whatever you want. But that one, the physical piece, will remain unchanged. And you could make, if you're doing craft shows, I'm going to make one for my local folks here. I've got 2 sayings that I'm going to put on this particular floating frame. And what I'm going to be using is, let's see here. What does it say? One is, if God can make a bug's butt light up, imagine what he could do for you. That's one saying. If God can make a bug's butt light up, imagine what he could do for you. And it says, if God can make a bug's butt light up, think of what he can do for you. And then the other one I'm going to do, and I really like this one. I like that one, but I really like this one. And this is largely why it's me and you that are here right now. Surround yourself with people who fight for you in rooms you aren't in. Surround yourself with people who fight for you in rooms that you aren't in. I'm going to put that in a saying in here and have those 2. But all I've got to do is just change the artwork. I've got the physical piece designed. And you can keep coming up with sayings and different things and different quotes and inspirational stuff. You can have a dozen different signs for sale in your booth from one pattern. All right. All right, guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Moses, for your financial contribution today. It was greatly appreciated. Thank you to all my gold patrons. Don't know what I'm going to do next week. I didn't know what I was going to do this one until yesterday. I designed this in between hammer blows yesterday. I was building walls and driving hammer nails until I couldn't do it anymore. And I come back and design. Go build a wall, come back and design. So we'll have something new for next week. And we'll talk about that design then. Until then, I'm Steve, Hobo with Wood. And I'm out. And eventually the stream will end sometime